You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the globe to bring you the latest developments in medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja.
We love the herb.
It's time for the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville. Now, here's your host, Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Thursday, June 29th, 2017, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to get to the radical rant today because I woke up to find Kevin Sabet being de-pantsed by Tom Angel and my representative Earl Blumenauer all over Twitter for his failure to understand how basic congressional processes work. And then in response to it, he goes even further off the deep end into full-scale tinfoil hat mode. I'll tell you all about it in extended rant at the end of the show today. But coming up first, we got the cannabis headline news. We'll catch up on the latest stories in the marijuana movement. Then we have our Police for Reform segment, where former Deputy Sheriff Jay Fleming, who used to do undercover narcotics work and vice work, and then became a medical marijuana patient, we'll talk to him about what's going on in the state of Arizona as they fight their opiate epidemic down there like they are all across America. Then in Drug War Data Mining, we take a look at a new study that looks at your brain on alcohol versus your brain on weed. Then in Cultivator's Corner, we visit with our good friend Jorge Cervantes, who gives us an international report on the latest on cannabis cultivation legally in Mexico, Colombia, South America, and Spain. That's all coming up today on the Marijuana Agenda. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Putting together the most comprehensive live weekday marijuana news talk program is a full-time job. Now you can do your part to ensure that listener-supported independent cannabis radio journalism can continue by becoming a patron of the Marijuana Agenda. Just log on to mjagenda.com and click the Become a Patron button. For your $4.20 monthly donation, you'll receive over 20 hours of original first-hour podcasts, plus other materials only available to paid subscribers. Or for just $9.99 a month, become a VIP patron. You'll get over 40 hours of podcasts for the complete program, including Toker Talk Radio, plus ad-free downloads of the segments heard on the Marijuana Agenda. Plus, VIPs get exclusive access to the video replay of the 2-hour live stream show and downloads of the spreadsheets and charts I provide from my years of curating marijuana data sets. Thank you for your support, and remember, I cannot do it without you. Please become a patron today at mjagenda.com.
It's time for Cannabis Facts about teen drug use from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A recent survey by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control indicates that in states that have legalized medical marijuana, the rate of marijuana consumption among high school students has not increased. In fact, in legal states like Colorado, teen use has actually decreased significantly. It's simply no longer a big deal for teenagers in legal states. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
The Marijuana Agenda. Like the liberal agenda, but with profits. Ka-ching.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb.com. City of Portland permit number 17-159855.
This is your Cannabis Headline News. Brought to you by MarijuanaMoment.net, the complete source for all your marijuana news in one morning newsletter from Marijuana Majority founder Tom Angel. Subscribe today for free at marijuanamoment.net.
This is your Cannabis Headline News for Thursday, June 29th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville. According to a report in the Denver Post, a Denver grand jury has indicted 62 people accused in a marijuana trafficking organization that reaped millions of dollars by illegally growing pot and then selling it out of state over a period of 4 years. It was the largest marijuana bust in Colorado since recreational marijuana was legalized in 2014, and it reflected an increased law enforcement focus on gray market marijuana growers who export their product beyond state lines. Andrew Friedman, a cannabis regulation consultant for states and cities, said he is hopeful that state legislation passed this year will make it more difficult for criminals to grow quantities of weed bound for the gray market while pretending to have a legal interest in the business. One of the bills would make it illegal to grow more than 12 plants in a residential neighborhood, even if the grower has approval given to some medical marijuana patients or caregivers to grow 99 plants or more. Marijuana Policy Project reports that Governor Chris Sununu signed an important bill into law that will expand the number of seriously ill patients who qualify for New Hampshire's medical cannabis program. House Bill 160 becomes effective on August 27th. It adds moderate to severe post-traumatic stress, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and moderate to severe pain as qualifying conditions for medical cannabis. Also, the law allows medical providers to certify patients for any medical condition that produces a qualifying symptom, and it requires the Department of Health and Human Services to inform patients about the possibility that certain rights and privileges may be denied by federal agencies. Lawmakers introduced a bill today that would use the power of the purse to reduce incarceration and crime at the same time. The legislation attempts to counter archaic tough-on-crime policies coming out of the Attorney General's office. The Reverse Mass Incarceration Act of 2017 was introduced by Senators Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, and Richard Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut. The bill, based on a 2015 proposal by the Brennan Center for Justice at the New York University School of Law, is widely backed by civil rights advocacy groups and supporters of criminal justice reform. The bill is essentially the reverse of the incentives provided in the 1994 crime bill. Instead of incentivizing states to increase prison populations, the legislation would pay states to decrease them while keeping down crime. Overall, it would lead to a 20% reduction in the national prison population over 10 years. New Approach Missouri, the group gathering signatures for a medical marijuana constitutional amendment in 2018, announced they've already gathered potentially 1/4 of the signatures they need to make the ballot. Quote, signature collection is steadily progressing with 40,000 signatures collected and with a plan to increase signature production with paid collectors later this summer, end quote, the group's legislative counsel, Jesse Kelly, said via press release. Kelly also announced that, quote, New Approach Missouri has been promised $200,000 in matching funds once the organization meets its own fundraising goal of $250,000. Kelly stated that the organization is, quote, well on their way with $185,000 to be banked by Friday, end quote. New Approach Missouri has until May 6, 2018 to submit signatures. Missouri's petitioning process is complicated by laws requiring signatures from at least 2/3 of the state's 8 congressional districts. If signatures were collected from the 6 smallest of the 8 districts, 160,199 would be required for a constitutional amendment. Advocates will shoot for tens of thousands more signatures than necessary to mitigate signatures lost to legal challenges and verification failures, a scenario that doomed Missouri's 2016 medical marijuana effort by just 23 signatures. Catalonia, Spain's parliament moved ahead on an issue that's dogged the legal marijuana states in America by approving a bill to regulate cannabis consumer clubs. The bill regulates cannabis consumer associations as well as the cultivation and transportation of marijuana by these clubs. It also establishes the general norms for the constitution of the organization and operation of these associations and their clubs, which until now were protected in municipal regulations. This has been your Cannabis Headline News for Thursday, June 29th, 2017. I'm Russ Belville.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
If you work in the cannabis industry, consume marijuana, or just support freedom, you need to know about breaking policy news that affects you. Marijuana Moment is the daily newsletter that helps you stay on top of all the latest and most important state, federal, and international cannabis developments. Brought to you by longtime legalization activist Tom Angel, Marijuana Moment puts a concise yet comprehensive overview of cannabis news in your inbox early every weekday morning. Wake up to Marijuana Moment and rest assured you'll be ready for the cannabis news that's driving the day. Subscribe now at marijuanamoment.net. I'm Russ Belville with the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 2 weeks for Cannabis Q&A with Dr. Mitch Earlywine from the Burning Issues podcast on cannabisradio.com. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
The Marijuana Agenda. Kevin Sabet's boogeyman since 2012.
You have offended my family, and you have offended Shaman Temple.
Yes, might have gotten away with it, too. If it wasn't for these blasted kids and their dogs.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
This is Police for Reform, brought to you by Law Enforcement Action Partnership at LEAP.cc. LEAP is a group of law enforcement professionals advocating for criminal justice reforms in the areas of drug prohibition, mass incarceration, asset forfeiture, community policing, and more. LEAP provides qualified speakers across the world to speak with authority on criminal justice issues. We visit with one such speaker now in Police for Reform.
Welcome to Police for Reform. I'm Russ Belville. Joining us on the program today, we have former Deputy Sheriff Jay Fleming, who worked with the Park County Sheriff's Office in Montana. He's currently speaking to us from Dolan Springs, Arizona. And how are you doing, Jay? Nice to speak to you.
Oh, doing pretty good. It's finally cooled off up here a little bit. We're down to about 100.
Oh, just 100. Well, that's good news, I suppose. Where is Dolan Springs exactly? And is this a little town, big town?
It's pretty little. It's about 2 blocks long, the actual town itself. We're about halfway between Las Vegas and Kingman, Arizona.
Okay. So, according to your bio, you got started up in Spokane, Washington in the 70s, and you were doing narcotics investigations, drug buys, and undercover work. Tell us about that, about your background fighting the drug war in the 70s and how that led you to the stance you take today with regard to the war on drugs.
Well, back in the 70s, the president was telling us that the war on drugs, was ruining the country and everything. And, some people go fight overseas, and I decided to fight the drug war here. But as time went on, I got to see that, we really weren't accomplishing anything. You arrest somebody, and all you do is make another job opening. By the time you get him in jail, or somebody else on the corner, selling the same thing. And it just came round and round, and I saw that we were in this circle that was just never going to end. We had to try something different.
Yeah, we hear that so often from the law enforcement personnel we speak to on this segment. And in your case, there's kind of an intersection with the medical marijuana movement as well. It says that your career was cut short in 1984. Tell our listeners what happened.
I was off working part-time driving a truck, and I tried to unload a pallet full of car batteries by myself, which wasn't a good thing to do. I herniated a disc and ended up having back surgery. It left my legs with neuropathy, and I've lost a lot of muscle in my right hand and my right leg. I get a lot of back pain. So I've been on opiates for about 20 years, and I just started medical marijuana here a few years ago, and it helps with the neuropathy much better than what the opiates do.
Yeah, we've heard that report that for neuropathic pain, cannabis is an effective and oftentimes superior pain relief option. So for you there in small town Arizona, of course, there is a medical cannabis program in the state. There was an attempt to legalize in 2016. And in 2016, one of the leading opponents of legalization was an Arizona-based company called Insys Therapeutics that manufactures an opioid-based medication and now is manufacturing a synthetic cannabis type medication. What's it like to know that this is going on and to see your fellow Arizonans still kind of behind the curve when it comes to the reform of these laws?
Well, yeah, that company put a lot of money into to try and defeat our legalization effort here. And what's happened, I think, now with Nevada and California, where I live on Highway 93 between Vegas and Kingman, where it meets I-40. I-40 comes out of California. I'm just afraid we're seeing a lot more unmarked cars here, and as with the legalization in those states, I think we're going to really have a lot of enforcement here on these two roads, picking people, left and right, and using our asset forfeiture and just racking up points, getting the people who purchase legal marijuana in California and Nevada, and then try and make it home here to Arizona or on east.
And with respect to asset forfeiture, what are the state's policies? I know some of the states recently have passed laws that require criminal convictions. How bad is it there in Arizona?
Arizona hasn't gone that way yet, I don't think. We still see cars on the side of the road here all the time with 3 or 4 unmarked and a marked unit with somebody's 4 car torn all apart. And I think that's just going to ramp up with, starting the 1st of July here, especially coming out of Nevada there.
Now, that's right. This Saturday, 1st of July, is the beginning of adult recreational sales from what may be up to 40 outlets, mostly in Las Vegas. And, of course, you'd be right there on that road of everyone coming back. What are the prospects in Arizona as far as moving forward with legalization? Is anyone looking at 2018, or is it more likely 2020 would be the next shot?
I don't know. They're kind of confused here. There's 2 groups that kind of fight each other over this, and that's one of the problems here.
Oh, no.
I don't know quite what we're going to do. We need to do something. We need to get this legalized and stop locking these people up. I mean, really.
Yeah, and from your experience, you found it to be, a wasteful and unproductive failure. The war on drugs is but one aspect of law enforcement reform that Law Enforcement Action Partnership is working on. What are some of the other aspects of law enforcement reform you think this country really needs to start employing?
Well, the racial divide. We hit the black communities much harder than we hit the white. And it just seems, I don't know, we go into these communities and we're not helping anybody. We arrest these people, they go in the cycle, they get into the prison system, and once you come out, they try and revoke you for anything. I mean, pot stays in your system 30 days. You stop by, smoke a joint with somebody, they violate you, and you're back in prison serving hard time again over really nothing. And we've got to stop that revolving door and try and get some training. It used to be in the prisons where you went to prison, you'd be trained, you'd come out with a trade. Today we simply warehouse them in these overcrowded places where all they do is learn to be better criminals and better drug dealers, I think.
And trying to fight for these reforms in Arizona, of course, up until recently was infamously the home to Sheriff Joe Arpaio. I understand he didn't get reelected this last term, but what's it like trying to convince conservative and oftentimes older Arizonans the wisdom of this stance?
I think most of them got it this last time, and there was some advertising in our last legalization thing that really wasn't the truth. And I think that's what pushed it over and got us to fail this last time. There was just so much money against this that it's difficult to fight. When I go out and talk to the older Arizonans here in the Kiwanis clubs and things, once you explain things to them, it's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But there's so much hype and, about the opiate thing now. It's an opiate crisis. It seems like most of it is heroin and the illegal fentanyl, but the people who are taking the brunt of this are the pain patients. A lot of doctors are cutting pain patients' doses in half. Like I've been on opiates for 20 years. When you reduce the dosage too much, the patient has 2 choices. I mean, you either turn to the street or you turn to a gun. I mean, living with chronic pain is hell, and when these doctors, for no medical justification, cut doses, I think our suicide rates are really going to jump this year.
This is one of the aspects of the opiate overdose epidemic that we need to pay attention to, is not wanting to restrict legitimate pain patients from the medications they need. I think sometimes there's a tendency to want to demonize fentanyl. Oh my God, it's 50 times more powerful than morphine or whatever. Hey, some people need 50 times more powerful than morphine, right?
Yeah, and it comes in micrograms is how it's dosed. I mean, you don't get a lot of it. It comes in patches usually. I don't think I've ever seen it in pill form. And most of that coming into the States now is illegal. Most of the pain patients are good people. They use it. But when DEA comes in and arrests a doctor, the problem is, 20 days later you go to get a prescription refilled and there's a sign on the door saying, DEA arrested him. And that's the first time the patient ever really knows. So you've got, 1,000 patients for some doctor scrambling, trying to get to other doctors, and nobody wants to take them because this was a bad doctor, but they certainly weren't all bad patients.
Yeah, it is a shame. So Jay Fleming with Law Enforcement Action Partnership, he's one of many, many speakers all across the United States and around the world who can appear at your Kiwanis Club, your Lions Club, your Rotary Club, any of these events that might be going on, and speak with the experience and wisdom of having fought on the front lines of the war on drugs. Jay, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. And is there any other contact information or websites you'd like to tell people about?
Yeah, just come to lawenforcementactionpartnership.org. Look at our speakers bureau, find somebody you'd like to come talk to you, and let us come explain the other side of the drug war and the other side of what law enforcement can do for you. We need to build trust back in our law enforcement.
Completely agreed. Thanks for being with us here on Police for Reform.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. MJAgenda.com.
New beginner guitars and banjos are often constructed much better than ones built before your time. Why struggle? Get a new instrument or fix the old one. The trusted professionals at the Fingerboard Extension will evaluate your instrument for free. Repairs are priced for people who work for a living. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
It's time for Cannabis Facts about Alzheimer's from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A new Florida study in the journal Molecular and Cellular Neuroscience found that cannabis promotes the growth of healthy new brain tissue. It can slow the effects of Alzheimer's and may in fact be able to halt it entirely. A long-term study by Ohio State University's Professor Gary Wenk concludes that people who regularly use marijuana get Alzheimer's at a much lower rate than others. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
The Marijuana Agenda, like the gay agenda, only with better music.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Putting together the most comprehensive live weekday marijuana news talk program is a full-time job. Now you can do your part to ensure that listener-supported independent cannabis radio journalism can continue by becoming a patron of the Marijuana Agenda. Just log on to mjagenda.com and click the Become a Patron button. If you're an organization or business looking to promote your brand, we have sponsorship patronage available at mjagenda.com. Sponsorship includes 15 and 30-second ad breaks and 6-minute interviews on the podcast, depending on sponsorship level, which begins at $19.99 a month. Thank you for your support, and remember, I cannot do it without you. Please become a patron today at mjagenda.com.
Promoting the end of adult cannabis prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It's even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more on this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Today in the Data Mines, we take a look at a study that is being reported in the journal Addiction. It's a research report entitled Structural Neuroimaging Correlates of Alcohol and Cannabis Use in Adolescents and Adults. So to translate that from researcher speak, you could say, we did some MRIs of the brains of teenagers and adults to see what alcohol or cannabis would do to their brains. That's basically what this study is doing. And they begin by noting that chronic alcohol use is associated with lower gray matter volume in the brain, and that alcohol use showed negative associations with widespread gray matter volume, even among young adults. So they wanted to check out alcohol use versus gray matter volume, alcohol use versus white matter integrity, cannabis use versus gray matter volume, and cannabis use versus white matter integrity among adults and adolescents, so adults and kids. And so they set this up with all the proper controls. They had adults aged 18 to 55 for your adults, had 853 of them. And for adolescents aged 14 to 18, they had 439 of them with a wide range of alcohol and cannabis use. And they based this on past 30-day use of cannabis. And so what they found is great degree of negative associations between gray matter volume and alcohol use among adults. The more they used alcohol, the less gray matter their brains had. And to a lesser extent, among adolescents, less gray matter, the more alcohol they used. There's also significant associations of higher alcohol use with poorer white matter integrity among adults, but there was no correlation between adolescents and their white matter integrity, whether or not they used alcohol. There were no associations observed between gray matter, volume, or white matter integrity in the past 30-day cannabis use in adolescents or adults. Let's restate that. No associations between cannabis use and any deficit in the structures of the brain with respect to white matter integrity, gray matter volume. Now, what does this gray matter volume mean anyway? What are we talking about if someone doesn't have a good degree of gray matter volume? Well, according to a study, Science Daily reported on this one, it was called Lack of Gray Matter in Brain is Linked to Schizophrenia and Bipolar Disorder. A new study shows that adolescents experiencing a first outbreak of psychosis have lower levels of gray matter in their brains than healthy teenagers. Strangely, this change was seen in patients suffering from various psychoses, including bipolar illness and schizophrenia. So all these years, we've had to listen to the marijuana prohibitionists tell us that marijuana couldn't be legalized because, oh my God, we got to worry about the teenagers. We got to worry about the schizophrenia. We got to worry about the psychosis that cannabis could cause. And what we're really finding out is when it comes to reducing gray matter in the brain, alcohol is the culprit. And we're finding that lack of gray matter in the brain or a reduction in gray matter in the brain is linked to schizophrenia and bipolar. It could be the alcohol that is making the confounding situation here. It could be the alcohol that is leading to these psychoses or these schizophrenia diagnoses or these bipolar diagnoses that our prohibitionist opponents so desperately want to tie to cannabis. And since so many people who consume cannabis also consume alcohol, it's hard to tease out which is causing the problem there when they purposefully want to confuse the issue. But these two studies taken together show us that we have far more to fear when it comes to our brains from overdoing it with alcohol than any amount of cannabis we could use.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association and the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit MJBA.net for more details.
This November, whether you see the words medical marijuana on your ballot or not, the issue is there. From the halls of Congress to your state capitol or city hall, politicians are already making decisions on medical marijuana policy on your behalf. This election, make sure they are representing you. Every vote is a vote for medical marijuana.
Visit votemedicalmarijuana.org today.
You're not high. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
I was told by the DART task force in Toledo that they're actually sprinkling fentanyl on marijuana now.
Okay, maybe you're a little high.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for our Government at Work, the latest in cannabis reform at the local, state, federal, and international level. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Welcome to Cultivator's Corner, brought to you by MarijuanaGrowing.com. Today, we visit with legendary cannabis cultivator Jorge Cervantes to learn the tips, tricks, and techniques to master your marijuana garden. Email your cannabis cultivation questions for Jorge to grow at mjagenda.com. He may answer them on a future episode. Now let's get growing in our Cultivator's Corner.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Cultivator's Corner with our good friend Jorge Cervantes, who's on the line with us. How you doing, Jorge?
Really good, Russ. It's a beautiful day here in Northern California. Thanks for having me on the program.
Yeah, glad to have you here. And I hear that you're moving northward from Northern California. Tell our listeners about that.
Oh, yeah. I'm just in the process of selling my home in Sonoma, California, and I'll move to Washington State, where I've been running my business for many years. And I'll spend some time there, but I'm looking forward to spending a good deal more time in Spain because I'm only there half time, about 6 months of the year now. And I also look forward to a lot of traveling because even though there's tons of stuff going on here in America, there's even more things going on in South America and also in Africa. And then Spain as well, lots of stuff.
Yeah, we know about your work in Barcelona. We always see your pictures coming across social media from Cannabis, and we've been aware of your activities there in Spain for quite a while. But I'm kind of interested in these other continents. I mean, cannabis is spreading everywhere. I have some friends in South Africa, actually, the Dhaka couple who are fighting for cannabis rights down there. Tell us what you know about what's happening in South Africa.
Oh man, they've legalized. Just the government has. It hasn't come to a vote by the like from a plebiscite or from a referendum. It's come right through regular channels of the government. And the government there is pretty amazing because they actually pay attention to science, and science rather than weird personal politics dominate everything. So they've made it legal to cultivate and possess and consume cannabis at home, and it looks like they're going to go all the way and legalize it. And two, that South Africa is surrounds a small country called Swaziland, and that's where Swazi comes from. It's like a kind of a cannabis country all the way. Yeah, so that's really, really pretty cool. In fact, this winter, I think I'm going to go down there and spend about a month. Be a good time. And the weather will be better in December or January than it is in Spain.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, of course, we also got the news just this week that the president of Mexico, Enrique Peña Nieto, has signed a medical cannabis law there. How is your travels to Mexico and the progress in cultivation there?
Well, it's pretty amazing. A few years ago, I was down there, and I went to, quite a few big mafia farms, and they were huge. It was pretty interesting. But and I also went to university in Mexico, in Puebla. But what I've seen is a big change because, well, first off, with legalization, there's the law that changed for human rights. Everybody has the human right to grow cannabis. There was one case that came up, and they just need two to four more. It's not set. 2 to more cases to go through and arrive to the Supreme Court. And once they win those cases, which it looks like they will, cannabis will be completely legal in Mexico. But right now, Peña Nieto has signed a bill to legalize medicinal cannabis. And just last week, I was hanging out with my good friend Julio Zunil, that he's the editor of Cáñamo Mexico, which is, cáñamo means hemp in Spanish. Anyway, he's got, what is his third annual fair, third or fourth Expo Cannabis Mexico happening next year again. And I just talked to him yesterday on the phone, as a matter of fact, and he said that, 7,000 people attended the last fair. So, and then I talked to several other old Mexican friends, and man, they're really excited. And the most interesting thing there is los narcos, or the mafia. They call them narcotraficantes. Anyway, those guys are pretty much going to be players in it. And then too, I don't know if you realize it or not, but Vicente Fox Quechada, he was the president of Mexico from 2000 to 2006. He also wrote the intro to my last book, Cannabis Encyclopedia. He said, and I believe him because, man, this guy is right on. He said he's going to start growing cannabis as soon as it's legal. But when he starts growing it, he's got thousands of acres of farmland. He's one of the biggest farmers in northern Mexico. So I look for a lot of things to be changing in Mexico. It's so cool. I mean, because when I was there, it was rough times.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, we've read a lot of reports about how legalization is changing things in Mexico for the peasant farmers who are working for the cartels, saying they used to get $100 a kilo for cannabis. Now it's below 25 a kilo, and
right.
There's some concern that's leading them then to switch to other crops like opium, or some of the cartels are increasing their production of methamphetamine. That's the only worry I have about that issue.
Well, that's all true. The amapola, they call it amapola, the poppy, the opium poppy. And in fact, I know a guy there, his name's Don Amapola. It's like Don Poppy. Yeah, he's pretty heavyweight, and I was a hard guy to hang out around. But that's all true. That's all true, and it's all about money and money. That's what's going on. The mafia is still out of control there. There's approximately 300 murders a day still in Mexico. And one of the things that Vicente Fox said in the intro to my book was he just wants to stop the killing and the funerals. You know, it's sad. It's sick stuff. And I'm looking forward to the end of this drug war. And then talking about that, there's also, I was, 3 years ago now, I was in Medellin, Colombia, and because that's when the legalization thing just started there. Well, now, gosh, it's amazing what's going on there. I think I may go there this winter too. I'm not certain on that trip, but I very well could because I've got an incredible amount of friends there. The Indians in Cauca is where the province where they have Cali. Cali, it's the biggest city in the south on the coast. And they grew more than 50 metric tons of cannabis there last year. And it looks like they're going to increase that somewhere between 5 and 10-fold this year. So it's that part's technically illegal, but it's seems to be tolerated. There's only, three cannabis licenses there in Colombia. So they're funneling them through those licenses. And I talked to my friend Henry that has the fair in Medellin. And it's going to be, next year will be the third annual. I didn't go to the first two. I think very well could go to the third one because it's really growing now. I've been invited there many times. But, he said it's really amazing. But the cool thing, this is so cool about Cauca and the Indians there. Because, there's always a big movement between the Indians and international business ventures that are already there in Colombia trying to take over the cannabis business. The Indians that suffered so badly during the FARC, the revolutionary group, that was broken, last year by, first it started with Uribe, and then the new president actually got a Nobel Prize for breaking the FARC and disbanding them. Well, they controlled the entire cannabis business in Cauca. And now, the Indians have taken over, and they have just basically the FARC is gone, and the Indians are in charge now. And what they've done is they've taken over the entire system. The FARC had a tax system for the cannabis, and the Indians took over, and they use the same tax system so they can support themselves, and they have a lot of they've got money to play politics now. So it's really changed a lot. I'm really amazed by Colombia. And too, you can grow 20 plants legally there at home. And they're also looking to legalize completely cannabis, but they're trying to control it. So that's super cool.
It's amazing to hear what's going on in these countries south of the border, Mexico and Colombia, that we have typically we've typically thought of those as narco states. I've just recently watching the History Channel's War on Drugs documentary specials, which are fantastic. I recommend them to anyone. And the most recent one was talking about the Medellin and the Cali cartels there in Colombia and the rise of cocaine. Is there any hope that the rise of legalizing cannabis in Mexico or Colombia or any of these places is going to help ameliorate some of those problems with the opiate substances or the cocaine substances?
Well, maybe not. One of the things that comes up is that opium's still really a strong cash crop. And, that's a problem, So as long as they can get a good price for their cannabis and they're not exploited, they're going to choose to grow one rather than the other. This news never gets up to America about the coca plants and also the amapola, what do you call those, the amapola again? Opiate poppies. What happens is they use this incredibly strong glyphosate Roundup that's not available in the United States. And the United States government goes down there and sprays that stuff. It completely destroys watersheds. Lots of people are getting cancer. None of that's reported. It kills all kinds of wildlife, anything that's susceptible, frogs, fish, everything. It's really been devastating. So that's going to continue to be a problem, and it's just got to be, I believe it could be solved on an economic basis.
Wow. Very interesting stuff. Jorge Cervantes, we appreciate your expertise and traveling around the world and bringing this information to us. Let's make sure people know about the marijuanagrowing.com site so that they can get the information on cultivating cannabis for themselves.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, actually, marijuanagrowing.com is my website. I've got a Facebook site. All you have to do is type in Jorge Cervantes into the internet, and you can find tons of stuff out about me. You can find my site, my my Facebook, all of my social media sites. Everything's on the first page or two.
Excellent.
It's real easy.
We appreciate that, Jorge, and good luck on your travels. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you very much, Russ. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for having me on the program.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. MJAgenda.com.
Your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
Hi, I'm Keith Stropp. I'm a 72-year-old lawyer, and I first smoked marijuana in 1965 when I was a freshman at Georgetown Law School, and I've been a regular smoker ever since. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults, and it should be of no interest or concern to the government whether we smoke or why we smoke. When we founded NORML in 1970, only 12% of the American people supported legalizing marijuana. Today, roughly 60% of the American people support full legalization of marijuana. They've come to understand that marijuana prohibition causes far more harm than the use of marijuana itself. It's time we ended marijuana prohibition and stopped treating marijuana smokers like criminals. If you agree, please visit our website at normal.org and sign up for our free newsletter. We are only incidentally talking about marijuana. We are really talking about personal freedom.
The Marijuana Agenda, like the alcohol agenda. But a lot safer.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for the UK Cannabis Chronicle from the UK Cannabis Social Clubs. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Total war against public enemy number one.
10 federal criminal penalties for up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
Marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug.
Legalization is just another word for surrender.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show.
Encourage people to use less drugs.
I inhaled.
That was the point.
I think it would be a mistake to legalize.
Negative reports coming out of Colorado.
People don't smoke marijuana.
Radical Rant. Today in the Radical Rant, we take a look at the latest shenanigans by the Joker to my Batman, Kevin Sabet, the leading prohibitionist in the nation, the CEO of Project SAM, the so-called smart approaches to marijuana. He's been getting a little uppity lately. He thinks that he's done some major accomplishments in 2017 in that nobody's legalized marijuana yet this year. He's been crowing about wins in Connecticut, Maryland, and Rhode Island, and Vermont. And what it really is that we haven't legalized there yet. So Vermont's going to legalize next year for sure. The rest of these are coming around as well. So Kevin Sabet is crowing about something that has merely been slightly delayed. And it's important to note that none of our reforms have been repealed. So he's not made any progress at all. He may have slowed some of our progress a little, but that's really more on the politics involved and the legislatures involved than it has anything to do with what Kevin Sabet is up to. But this is the garden variety stuff you expect from a prohibitionist. You expect them to try to spin and try to make things seem better than they are. But usually Kevin Sabet doesn't do such a sloppy job with his spin that the entire internet can own him for the rest of the day. And that happened yesterday when Kevin Sabet and Project SAM put out a tweet and a press release regarding the new appropriations bill, the new funding bill that is being put before the U.S. Congress. And in the press release, he says, quote, A proposed government spending bill released today eliminated a provision that has protected the marijuana industry from federal prosecution for violating the Controlled Substances Act. In his tweets, he said, quote, "Breaking. Congress strips provision barring DOJ from spending money to enforce pot laws. This is a big change. This is, of course, far from over, but pot investors have to be freaking out. It is indeed a new day." End quote. So what he's talking about here is the spending amendment to the rider to the spending bill called Rohrabacher-Farr, which is now called Rohrabacher-Blumenauer. It's the amendment to the spending bill that says Department of Justice and its DEA can't spend any money going after the legal medical marijuana states. It's been enacted every year starting in fiscal year 2015, and it's currently enacted through fiscal year 2017, which ends on September 30th. So what Sabet's excited about is that there's a new draft in the subcommittee for the fiscal year 2018 Justice Department Appropriations Bill, the next appropriation. He's saying, aha, they stripped out Rohrabacher-Farr. They removed it from the spending rider. But here's what's going on. It's never been part of the original bill. It wasn't part of the original bill in 2014, in 2015, in 2016, in 2017. The original bill never says the Department of Justice can't spend the money. It's an amendment. That's why it's called an amendment. It's something that is added later to the original bill. Congress didn't strip out anything. It was never there to be stripped out. It's something that gets added in the amendment process. And so Drug Policy Alliance tweeted out, the Rohrabacher-Farr amendment is never in the base bill, so it hasn't been stripped. Nobody is worried. You're congressionally clueless, Kevin. A new day? Actually, it's the same day as the last 3 years when it's been won on the floor in committee and made it to the final bill. And my congressman, Earl Blumenauer, tweeted, Sam clearly doesn't understand legislative process. Sam's complete misrepresentation of the legislative process is entirely consistent with their repeated falsehoods about marijuana, end quote. So Kevin Sabet gets called on this, and then he doubles down. He doubles down trying to say that the amendment was initially passed in 2015, even though it was passed in 2014. And then he tries to point out that it was omitted from the next, or he fails to point out it was omitted in 2015, 16, and 17, the way he's saying it's omitted in 2018. So he's desperately trying to cover his ass on messing this up. And in doing so, went as far to have a second press release in response to Representative Blumenauer, my congressman, saying that that Congressman Blumenauer and Congressman Rohrabacher, Dana Rohrabacher of California, who's the co-sponsor of this amendment, the two of them who pass this amendment every year, said that they are, quote, funded by illegal marijuana operations selling pot candies to kids. That is despicable. Nobody in the legal marijuana world is selling pot candies to kids. It's the illegal sellers that do that, the ones that don't check ID. And to show you how completely tinfoil hat Kevin Sabet has gotten since he's lost year after year after year after year, and the Gallup poll since he has started Project Sam has risen 12 points from 80%, 48% to 60% national support. We've quadrupled the number of legal states since he got started. He's so batty over this that he then went forth after getting caught and chastised by Representative Blumenauer, said, quote, and this is in the Project Sam's official Twitter account, not Kevin Sabet's Twitter account, said, quote, yes, they back it because Tom Angel, representing Big Pot, who funds these two, Rohrabacher and Blumenauer, probably wrote it. More in the morning. Oh, so now my colleague Tom Angel from Marijuana Moment and writer for Massroots has another gig, apparently. Apparently now he's writing press releases for congressmen. Congratulations, Tom, on your new What's this? Oh, I'm sorry. Follow-up tweet from Tom Angel. Quote, I'm flattered our opponents think I write press statements for members of Congress, but no. Oh, it's gotta suck being a marijuana prohibitionist these days, with 60% of America supporting us, with 3 out of 5 Americans living in a jurisdiction with some form of legalized marijuana. We'll talk more about this in hour 2. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down.